The US, along with the UK and France, have launched illegal strikes on Syria for an alleged chemical attack by the Assad regime against his own people. Now, in this video, I'm going to have a fairly comprehensive breakdown, including why this strike was illegal, if there was any evidence of a chemical attack, what the US claims they struck versus what was actually struck, and reactions from supporters and dissenters. Now, before I get to all that, I want to share this quote that I think perfectly sums up American foreign policy. U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis called it, quote, a one-time shot, but did not rule out further attacks. Yeah, just a one-time shot, unless, there's a reason for us to attack again, or we find a reason to attack again, then I guess it's not just a one-off shot, it's continuous striking. Now, how do we know that this attack by the US, the UK, and France was illegal? Well, here we go. Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the UN's Charter states, all members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purpose of the United Nations. And just to further this point, the Real News interviewed Alfred de Zayas, a UN independent expert on the promotion of a democratic and equitable international order, and he also teaches international law at the Geneva School of Diplomacy. And here's what he said about this. Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the United Nations Charter is very clear in stipulating a prohibition on the use of force. There are only two exceptions. Force can be used in self-defense, Article 51. Or if the Security Council so decides, pursuant to Article 39, it must first determine that there is a threat or a breach of international peace, and then, if you have a clear resolution of the Security Council, then certain use of force would be legal. Otherwise, you have the crime of aggression. So, apart from Trump not getting congressional approval, on the international stage, this is a crime of aggression. Now, apart from being illegal, where's the evidence that this chemical attack even happened? Well, this from Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. I'm confident the Syrian regime conducted a chemical attack on innocent people in this last week. So, all we have to go on is the confidence of Jim Mattis. This is the same Jim Mattis that just a couple months ago said that the US has no evidence of Syrian use of sarin gas, saying that, quote, we have other reports from the battlefield from people who claim it's been used. We do not have evidence of it. Now, the OPCW, which is the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, had planned to investigate the site of the alleged chemical attacks, with the Syrian government saying that they welcome the investigation. But the US, the UK, and France launched their strikes a day before the OPCW was set to arrive. Now, luckily, the OPCW is still continuing to deploy in Syria, so hopefully we'll find whether this chemical attack actually happened. But so far, at least one of the targets of the US-led strike are questionable, with workers at a destroyed Syrian lab saying they produce antidotes to snake venom, not toxic weapons. The site, according to Western powers, was part of the Syrian government's chemical weapons infrastructure, but Saeed, an engineer and head of the center's paint and plastics department, told AFP only non-lethal research and development was underway at the center. As we work in civilian pharmaceutical and chemical research, we did not expect that we would be hit, he said. Instead, the center had been producing antidotes to scorpion and snake venom while running tests on chemical products used in making food, medicine, and children's toys, according to Saeed. If there were chemical weapons, we would not be able to stand here. I've been here since 5:30 a.m. in full health. I'm not coughing, he added. Saeed said the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons had visited the site in Barza in recent years and had declared it free of any toxic weapons. Quote, the OPCW used to stay in the two upper rooms and use the labs, and we would cooperate with them completely, he said. The OPCW has proven in two reports that this building and the center as a whole are empty and do not produce any chemical weapons. So, from this reporting, it appears that the strike on this building was pointless. Now, I don't want to get too deep into a debate on whether there was chemical attacks or not, because we just don't have the facts. And ultimately, my position is it doesn't matter either way. Why does the US need to get involved? How often does US intervention actually work? Now, another angle on this is Russia. So Russia right now is backing the Syrian government. So was Russia aware that these strikes were about to happen? Well, there's actually conflicting reports on that. So French Defense Minister Florence Parly said the Russians were warned ahead of time, despite claims from the Pentagon that Moscow was not notified. We did not do any coordination with Russia on these strikes, and neither did we pre-notify them, Marine General Joseph Dunford, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said Friday night. So here we have even more conflicting reports about what actually happened, and this time from two government officials who are on the same side. Now, I want to get some reaction here. So this is a mixture of some positive reaction and some not so good reaction. So first, let's go to Democratic Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. Here's what she tweeted out. Donald Trump must come to Congress to obtain a new authorization for use of military force, presents a clear set of objectives, and ultimately hold Putin accountable for the bloodshed he has enabled. All right, now, congressional approval is of course important, but otherwise in that tweet where she says, and ultimately hold Putin accountable, she's trying to escalate a war with Russia. So right now there are two pro-war parties in the US. The Democrats and the Republicans are both pro-war. Now, this actually echoed a lot of what Democrats in Congress were saying. But luckily, there is Democrat Tulsi Gabbard, who is a U.S. Army veteran and represents Hawaii's 2nd District. Here's what she said just a few hours before the strike.
The neocons and war hawks who are calling for a U.S. military attack on Syria either don't know what the mission is, or they're pursuing a mission that is contrary to U.S. interests. The fact is that launching an attack on Syria that would weaken or cripple the Syrian military will create instability, and it will strengthen terrorist groups on the ground like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Army of Islam, and others who are all seeking to overthrow the government and establish their own caliphate. Now, does that serve the interests of the United States? Is that the mission that we should be pursuing? The weaker the Syrian government and military are, the more dependent they will be on assistance from Russia and Iran, thereby strengthening their position and power in Syria. Is that our mission? Is that serving the best interests of the American people and the United States? U.S. military action in Syria could escalate into a conflict with other regional actors like Russia. Russia has already responded, saying that any U.S. military attack will elicit a response from them. How does going to war with Russia over Syria best serve the interests of the American people? Our troops put their lives on the line for our country. Their sacrifice must be honored by sending them on missions that are worthy of their sacrifice, not going to fight more interventionist regime change wars that cost our country precious lives and resources and increase the suffering of those in the countries we attack.
Now, I thought that was a pretty good response, and it echoed a lot of what other progressives like Bernie Sanders were also saying in reaction to this strike on Syria. But now let's go a little international. So here's reaction from Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn. So he tweeted out, "I've written to Theresa May in response to last night's legally questionable airstrikes on Syria. Parliament should have been consulted and voted on the matter. The UK Prime Minister is accountable to Parliament, not to the whims of a US President." Now compare that sort of leadership to Canada's embarrassment Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who tweeted out this: "Canada supports the decision by the US, the United Kingdom, and France to take action against the Assad regime's ability to launch chemical weapon attacks." So Canada, a country once known for its peacekeeping, has now been reduced to sucking up to aggression. Now, there's one last tweet I want to end on, and it's maybe the most important point, because it's about the actual Syrian people that are stuck in the middle of all this. So this went out from Boston Globe's Matt Visor, who tweeted this: "Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, quote, I've never seen refugees as traumatized as coming out of Syria. It's got to end. Number of Syrian refugees admitted to the US, 2016, over 15,000. 2017, over 3,000. 2018, 11. 11 refugees in 2018. These bullshit talking points about helping the Syrian people piss me off. The idea that aggression is going to solve the problem has proven not true. And if you're going to be aggressive, at least be equally aggressive in how many refugees you take in from these countries that you destroy. So it's a shame that the people in power think that aggression works, when continually we see aggression only escalates the situation. And it's important to remember, too, that the US launched missiles a year ago for the same reason, and the alleged chemical attacks didn't stop. So escalation hasn't worked. This aggression will just throw more gas on the fire, a fire that any sane person wouldn't want reality star Donald Trump in charge of. Hey, if you like this video, hit that subscribe button below and consider throwing me a few bucks on Patreon at patreon.com/therationalnational or therationalnational.com/join.